Good afternoon, everyone. You all know that yesterday the Senate voted to vote cloture on the motion to proceed to the Road to Housing bill. Big vote, 84-6. This is a piece of legislation that the President has talked about a good amount. He talked about it in his State of the Union address. And this legislation has a number of important provisions. It reduces and cuts red tape, increases housing supply, makes some important reforms like the President suggested the other night, which is to place restrictions on the ownership, institutional investor ownership of single-family houses. And so it's a great job by Chairman Scott and his team. This is a bicameral, bipartisan bill that includes a number of important Senate priorities. A number of our senators have had input into this bill, and it's a piece of legislation that strikes at the very heart of the issue of affordability, particularly with younger Americans who are very concerned about their ability to experience the American dream and own a home. This legislation will make that more possible. On another issue, we are now 18 days into a second Democrat shutdown, and unfortunately it's Department of Homeland Security. Couldn't be worse timing. This is an agency that has obviously huge responsibilities and funds a number of important functions in our government, including our TSA agents who make it safe to fly. And so I'm hopeful that the Democrats will come to the conclusion that this is a really bad idea, particularly right now. As you all know, we live in a dangerous world, and that's abundantly clear. And there are 120,000 DHS employees who don't know right now whether or not they're going to get paid here in the very near future. And so I would hope that the Democrats would work with us. There's been a tremendous amount of outreach on behalf of the administration. The White House has worked to try and come up with provisions in this legislation that would help attract Democrat support. The Democrats at some point have to take yes for an answer. And so I just think it's really important, and 18 days into this now, second Democrat government shutdown, that because it is the Department of Homeland Security, which is responsible for defending and protecting the homeland, that the Democrats work with the White House and try and negotiate a deal that would allow that agency to be reopened again, for all the reasons I just mentioned. I'm going to hand it off now to Chairman Scott. As I said, he did a great job negotiating the Road to Housing bill, and I'll give him an opportunity to speak to that, and then we'll take your questions. Chairman.
Thank you. Promises made, promises kept. President Trump made a very important campaign promise on the campaign trail, and we are delivering. Both the House and the Senate passing historic housing legislation. The 21st Century Road to Housing Act really does meet the need. It focuses on local jurisdictions, number one. It removes red tape and unnecessary burdensome processes from the federal government, number two. And number three, it creates and will expand housing supply while focusing on affordability. So important. As a kid who grew up in poverty, my mother became a first-time home buyer at the age of 38. Today in America, that age is 40. How do we bring those prices down? How do we make it easier for your average person to experience their version of the American dream through home ownership? I think it starts by making sure that Washington understands solutions start at home. And so what you'll find in this legislation is we start in local jurisdictions. We start by making sure that both the House, the Senate, Republicans and Democrats do not see this issue as red versus blue, House versus Senate. We see this as taking care of Americans who desperately want to experience the American dream. We made that possible through legislation that passed the House 399-1, passed through the Senate unanimously. Now we find ourselves taking 20 to 21 provisions out of the House bill, out of 25, and 36 out of our 40, creating in harmony legislation that moves housing forward for the average American, and it's really good news.
Do you think the Congress would need to authorize any military action against Iran beyond the 60-day or 90-day window?
No. I think the President has the authority that he needs to conduct the activities, the operations that are currently underway there. As you know, there's a lot of controversy around, questions around the War Powers Act, but I think the President is acting in the best interest of the nation and our national security interests by ensuring that he's protecting Americans and American bases and installations in that region, as well as those of our allies.
The President has not ruled out boots on the ground. He has said that this could go on for a long period of time. 6 American service members have already been killed. Where is Congress? When does Congress weigh in?
Well, Congress obviously, as you know, has the power of the purse. The President has broad authorities under Article 2 of the Constitution when it comes to defending America's national security interests. And the authority that he is using is very similar to that used by President Obama in Libya, going back prior to that, previous administrations. So, obviously, I don't think the President probably is going to take options off the table. You don't want to telegraph to your enemies what you will or will not do. But I think that they are achieving great success with what they've done so far. And it's targeted, of course, at naval and air assets in that region that the Iranians currently possess, ballistic missiles that could do great damage to Americans and to our allies in the region. And so I think once that has been achieved, once those objectives have been achieved, there are a lot of questions about what happens next. And I think, frankly, that's going to be largely up to the Iranian people. But this will eliminate the threat that is posed that could kill countless numbers of Americans. There is no country in the world that has more American blood on its hands than Iran. So I think the President was perfectly within his rights to take the steps that he took. I think it was a necessary step in order to protect American lives.
There are concerns about no munitions piles, sir. There have been those concerns for some time. Are you worried that this is a military readiness issue? Because Reavers told Congress that there are a high number of expenditures when it comes to munitions that are happening right now as a result of Iran.
Right, and I think that one of the things that we did last summer, and one of the reasons we thought it was important to provide additional resources to the Defense Department is because for many years during the Biden administrations, defense spending wasn't even keeping up with the rate of inflation. And so we forward funded some things, but obviously we'll be paying attention, and General Kane, we're going to hear from him later today, and that question about munitions I'm sure will be asked. But as I've said earlier, I think it's important to remember too that not only do we have, I think the resources necessary to conduct the operations that are underway right now, but also a lot of our allies in the region also have capabilities that are coming to bear now. And I think the Iranians, by sort of lashing out in every direction, have really sort of united a lot of our Arab allies in the region, and I think you're going to see more of that. The Europeans are starting to engage a little bit. I think people realize and recognize the threat that Iran represents, not just to that region, but to the entire world, and particularly if they continue to develop a nuclear capability. So it starts there, ballistic missiles, naval assets, an important shipping lane. There are lots of objectives that I think are going to be met, and hopefully will be met in a time frame that doesn't require some of the things that you are suggesting or asking questions about.
The Democrats called it unconstitutional that Congress was not briefed beforehand. Why, in your opinion, was that okay that they went ahead without informing you beforehand? And do you buy the argument that Trump is now using that it was a preemptive strike?
Well, I think it was clearly a preemptive strike, and I think there was an imminent threat there. It's been conveyed, I think as most of you know, at least to the degree that they can share it, through the intelligence community, that American assets in the region were going to be struck by Iranian missiles. And so I think it was, they responded accordingly there. The first part of your question was?
That Congress wasn't briefed beforehand.
Right, yeah. Well,
and saying this is unconstitutional.
You know, I mean, the idea that the administration in any operation is going to tell 535 members of Congress who never leak about anything what exactly they're going to do. But they did inform us. They met with us last week. The Gang of Eight heard what was being contemplated. I was called, notified the day that the actual operations got underway. And we had a meeting again yesterday where they updated on progress so far. And we're going to have another meeting this afternoon at 3:30 with the entire Senate, both Democrats and Republicans, well, they're going to lay out and answer questions about the ongoing operation. So I think that there have been, I think the administration, frankly, has very much kept us in the loop, at least as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not just saying that's not just me. That's Democrats and Republicans, House and Senate.
Congress voted to authorize the Iraq and Afghanistan. Why not only authorize this?
They've been told to evacuate. They've also been told that the U.S. government cannot help them to evacuate. Did the State Department and the Trump administration kind of bungle the response in terms of telling Americans whether or not to evacuate, and now it's too late?
I think that you will see a ramped up, intensified effort to ensure that Americans are being evacuated from the region, and I suspect that's going to involve a good amount of investment and air assets to get people out of there. But obviously there are implications. This has turned out, as we kind of suspected it might be, that the Iranians, when they retaliated, it would be a very far-reaching response. But the fact that the Ayatollah is out of there and a good amount of his leadership team makes this world and our country safer. And I don't think there's any question about that. And I think getting rid of the capability that the Iranians have, both in terms of short-term and medium-term, or medium range, I should say, short-range and medium-range ballistic missiles, making sure that they can never threaten the world with a nuclear weapon. These are really, really worthwhile objectives and things that I think have been a part of our national security, obviously, objectives and strategy for a long time. This was an opportunity to act on it, and had we not acted on it, I think the loss of life would be a lot greater. But we mourn any loss of life, and the families of those whose lives have been lost, we are, all of us, I think, incredibly mournful with them, and we'll continue to pray for them and their families.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. Okay, and I want to thank Senators Murray and Kaine for being here as well. Well, it's been 4 days since the Trump administration launched the U.S. into a war most Americans oppose, and his administration can't explain the reasons we did it. I left the intelligence briefing more concerned than reassured. If the case for war were strong, it would be consistent. Instead, the rationales change by the hour. Regime change, nuclear weapons, missiles, defense, preemptive. Which is it? When the justification keeps shifting, a strategy is missing. There is no strategy. 6 American service members are dead. And when talking about the tragic loss of our brave service members, what did Trump say? Quote, he said, "There will likely be more before it ends. That's the way it is." Trump is using America's sons and daughters as pawns in his endless war. That's the way it is. The conflict is widening. Oil prices are already skyrocketing. Wars without clear objectives do not remain small. They get bigger, bloodier, longer, and more expensive. This is not a necessary war. It's a war of choice. Americans don't want another endless war. They want us to pay attention to lowering their costs. While the administration debates which justification to use for war, families are debating which bill to pay. Gas prices are rising. Groceries are still too high. Rent is crushing families. Health premiums are rising. Instead of mission creep abroad, we need cost relief at home. Instead of shifting rationales for war, we need a clear strategy for affordability. That's what Americans are asking for. That's what Senate Democrats are fighting for. Senator Murray.
Well, Donald Trump promised lower costs and no more foreign wars. Instead, he has given us higher costs and a new costly war in the Middle East. It is hard to imagine a more straightforward betrayal. This president sent our kids into a war of choice from his beach club in Florida without clear objectives or any sense of an endgame, and without any authorization from Congress, no debate, no public hearings, no justification to the American people. My thoughts go out to the families of the service members who have already been killed in Trump's war. What Americans want is health care. They want to pay less at the grocery store and the gas station. They do not want to spend billions in taxpayer dollars to bomb Iran in a war that already tragically resulted in the deaths of American service members. Congress should end this war now. Republicans should grow a spine and vote with Democrats in support of the War Powers Resolution. But instead, some Republicans are now trying to use Trump's reckless war of choice in Iran as a new pretext to completely ignore Donald Trump's reckless occupation of American cities with rogue ICE agents. Look, I'm not going to vote to fund ICE and let them detain, brutalize, shoot, or kill more American citizens just because Donald Trump started an unconstitutional war that no one asked for. And let's be clear, when it does come to national security, the Pentagon, CIA, law enforcement, the FBI, and other key agencies are already funded. And if Republicans want to know who is actually undermining our cyber defenses and our counterterrorism work, all they have to do is look across town at Kristi Noem's DHS and Kash Patel's FBI. How many key personnel has Trump already fired for no reason at our top cyber defense agency? How many FBI agents are focused on helping round up farm workers with no criminal history instead of counterterrorism? Why did Patel just last week fire members of the FBI's counterintelligence squad? And why on earth was a 22-year-old hired to lead counterterrorism at DHS? That should be a bigger concern to Republicans than a simple demand that ICE follow the same standards as local police. And I'll close with this. War should be a last resort. I voted against the war in Iraq, and even the Bush administration was not as cavalier as Trump about the cost of war in lives or in taxpayer dollars. Trump's war will easily cost more than it would have cost to extend the ACA tax credits. This president and this Republican Congress have shown the American people there's always money for war, there's always money for billionaire tax breaks. It is just everyday Americans who are struggling with their health care or groceries who Republicans just can't spare a dime. Well, Democrats have a very different message. We're going to keep fighting to put working families ahead of starting costly, unnecessary wars.
Thank you, Senator Murray. Senator King.
Thank you all. So I represent a very pro-military state. I'm on the Armed Services Committee. One of my kids is in the military. And the question that Virginians and I think Americans are asking is, haven't we learned anything? Haven't we learned anything from 25 years in the wars in the Middle East? More than 14,000 U.S. troops and contractors killed, more than 65,000 troops and contractors injured, hundreds of thousands of civilian deaths, $8.2 trillion that could have been spent here at home, spent in wars in the Middle East, and what did we get out of it? That's what my military state is asking me. They're asking me about their kids who were deployed on the Ford Carrier Strike Group overseas. They went to the Mideast. They then were told by the president to go to the Caribbean, now back to the Mideast. It's going to be the longest carrier deployment likely in recent history. These sailors who haven't seen their families on a ship that is not in great shape, that needs to get back in port. President Trump is breaking his promises. He campaigned as an end war president, as a peace president. Less than 6 weeks ago, The Pentagon put out a national defense strategy under the name of the Secretary with the approval of Donald Trump. Here was the promise. No longer will the department be distracted by interventionism, endless wars, regime change, and nation building. What? Toppled one government to arrest their leader, assassinated the leader of another government. That's not intervention? That's not regime change? That's not nation building? They're breaking their promises, just like they're breaking their promises, as Senator Murray and Senator Schumer talked about, to bring costs down for everyday folks. And these are connected. When you use your money to wage war, you take money away from other priorities. When you wage a war that raises energy prices that are already too high, you're hitting people who are dealing with health care costs up, housing up, food up, groceries up, energy costs up. It's time for the president to keep promises, not break them. That's why I'm so glad that we're going to put everybody on the record tomorrow. Nobody gets to hide and give the president an easy pass or an end run around the Constitution. Everybody's got to declare whether they're for this war or against it. That will be the vote tomorrow. I appreciate leadership helping us get it scheduled at a time when everybody can vote and be held accountable. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
The Republicans say that Democrats need to fund DHS ASAP in light of all of this. What is an update on your conversations with the White House?
Well, first of all, it's very easy for them to get all of this funded. Simply to agree to our common sense proposals on ICE and Border Patrol. These are proposals, what we've asked for is what every police force does. In terms of our negotiations, look, we're still far apart, but we're still negotiating and exchanging paper back and forth. Yes.
In terms of what's happening with the War Powers resolution, can you talk to the argument that it is a harder vote and even maybe more dangerous for troops to take that vote now that we have counterattacks on American troops?
Okay. He's our war powers expert.
There are some members of the Democrats that are concerned about that as well.
Look, people ought to grapple hard with war questions. I mean, we shouldn't be at war without a debate and vote. That was what the framers intended. We protect our troops when we do it the right way. We put them at risk when we do it the wrong way. I mean, we came within a hairbreadth of 3 F-15 crews being killed by a friendly nation that shot our F-15s down. Why did they do that? Because there was no plan and no rationale. When you go into it without a rationale and when the plan is half-baked, you end up with situations like that. We're acting because we love the troops. Our troops serve bravely, whether it's in Iraq or Afghanistan or Vietnam, they always serve bravely. The risk for them is bad civilian decision-making, and we're insisting upon good decision-making so we minimize the risk to our troops.
Yes, yes.
Yes. If you could speak to the intelligence briefing, if there was anything you could share with regard to the risk of retaliation on American soil, anything that Americans should be concerned about, how this could ripple here at home.
Look, I can't talk about a classified briefing. As you know, at 3:30, all the senators will be able to ask questions there. I can tell you I left that briefing with more questions than I went in with. It was not a very satisfying briefing. Yes.
What's your reaction to what Secretary Rubio said yesterday, that the administration felt compelled to act because Israel was going to act with or without U.S. support in attacking Iran, and that casualties on U.S. bases in the region would have been higher if the U.S. had acted preemptively? Trump
just contradicted him, and it just shows you that they don't have a real answer as to what is going on, plain and simple. Yes, no, back there. Yes, you raise your hand. Yeah.
Do you expect a supplemental?
I can't hear you.
Do you expect a supplemental spending request from the Trump administration?
Well, you'll have to ask them. Thank you.
Middle East be able to depart As of a few minutes ago before I left, 9,000 Americans have been able to leave the region since the start of this war. We have about 1,500 Americans that are requesting assistance with departure. We have identified and continue to identify charter flights, military flight options, and expanded commercial flight options, meaning working with the airlines to send bigger airplanes with more seats, and the combination of those three things. The impediment we're facing now, in many cases, we've had a couple instances in which we have planes in the air and on the way, and unfortunately the airspace gets closed and they have to turn back around, so we're working through those challenges. Here's the message I want to deliver Americans who are in the Middle East and in need of assistance. It is very important, and I ask this of the networks as well. It is important for you to please put both the website and the phone numbers on your screens, because we need people. We need to know where you are. We need to know. We need to have contact information for Americans that need assistance. They have to register with us, because as these options begin to open up, and as they open up, we have to be able to call you. We have to be able to reach you. We have to be able to know where you're staying, so we can get this information to you and coordinate appropriately. And it'll be a variety of methods: charter flights, military flights and transports, expanded commercial opportunities, and in some cases land routes that will allow them to go to neighboring countries who might have open airports at that point. So it's a lot of different things here that need to happen in order to move people, but it all starts by knowing that you're there. It all starts by knowing that where you are and how we can get a hold of you. So I'm asking the networks and all of the media outlets, please publicize the two phone numbers that we've put out, as well as the website, so people can contact us and register. We've had, thousands of people call already. As I said, we've identified almost 1,600 that are requesting assistance with departure, but we need you to please be able to identify that. As I came in, I also saw the media reports about Dubai's consulate. The last update I had with seconds before getting before these cameras was that a drone unfortunately struck a parking lot adjacent to the Chancellery building and then set off a fire in that place. All personnel are accounted for. As you're aware, we began drawing down personnel from our diplomatic facilities in advance of this. In the cases, for example, of Beirut, we basically drew down to bare bones, as well as in Baghdad and in Erbil and in a couple other posts as well. So we've been very fortunate, obviously, but our embassies and our diplomatic facilities are under direct attack from a terroristic regime. With an update, I will obviously refer you to the Department of War. Suffice it to say that our objectives remain as they've been identified from the beginning and by the President laid out clearly yesterday. Iran can never have a nuclear weapon, and we will now not allow Iran to hide behind the immunity of a massive short-term ballistic missile inventory or the ability to make them or launch them. And so CENTCOM, in a joint operations, is carrying out a systematic destruction of their missile belt, destruction of their launchers, and destruction of their ability to make these, as well as the destruction of their Navy. From what I've been told by the Department of War, everything is on or ahead of schedule and proceeding on these objectives. We have every confidence in the world that these objectives will be achieved. The last point I would make is, and I said this yesterday and I repeat, what's about to, you're about to see, we're going to unleash Chang on these people in the next few hours and days. You're going to really begin to perceive a change in the scope and in the intensity of these attacks as, frankly, the two most powerful air forces in the world take apart this terroristic regime and defang it and take away its ability to threaten its neighbors or hide behind a zone of immunity that allows them to develop their nuclear ambitions. This terroristic, radical, cleric-led regime cannot be ever allowed to have nuclear weapons. We saw what they were willing to do to their own people. They were willing to slaughter their own people in the streets. Imagine what they would do to us. Imagine what they would do to others. Under President Trump, that will never, ever happen. All right?
Yesterday you talked about Israel. Mr. Secretary.
Please, guys, I can't hear them all. Yes.
Yesterday, you told us that Israel was going to strike Iran, and that's why we needed to get involved. Today, the president said that Iran was going to get.
Yeah, your statement is false. So that's not what I was asked very specifically. Were you there yesterday?
Yes, I asked the question.
No, were you the one that? Because somebody asked me a question yesterday. Did we go in because of Israel? And I said, you were asking me that. You that follow up, and I said no. I told you this had to happen anyway. The president made a decision, and the decision he made was that Iran was not going to be allowed to hide behind its ballistic missile program, that Iran was not going to be allowed to hide behind its ability to conduct these attacks. That decision had been made. The president systematically made a decision to systematically destroy this terroristic capability that they had, and we carried that out. I was very clear in that answer. This was a question of timing, of why this had to happen as a joint operation, not the question of the intent. Once the president made a decision that negotiations were not going to work, that they were playing us on the negotiations, and that this was a threat that was untenable, the decision was made to strike them. That's what I said yesterday, and you guys need to play it. If you're going to play these statements, you need to play the whole statement, not clip it to reach a narrative that you want to do, all right?
This is your statement. This is your statement, Mr. Secretary.
Go ahead.
What do you make of the War Powers resolution that's being considered here in Congress?
I mean, Congress votes on those. They can if they want. There's mechanisms for it. We've complied with the War Powers Act, even though we believe it's unconstitutional, as has every other administration. Every other president has found the War Powers Act to be unconstitutional. Nonetheless, we notified the Gang of Eight, which was an appropriate mechanism by which to notify Congress. We sent the notification within 48 hours, the way the law requires. I'm here today to have, I don't know, my 6th or 7th briefing before the entirety of the House and Senate, which is far more than I ever got from any administration in the time that I was here, certainly when I was a member of the Gang of Eight. And so we've complied with we've over-complied with the law and what it requires. This is an action by the president to address a real threat. A real threat. This is hostilities designed to eliminate a threat to the safety and the security of the United States and to our allies.
Was there a plan in place to evacuate Americans before the attack took place?
Well, that's the plan we're trying to carry out. The problem is, or the challenge we are facing, is airspace closures. If a country closes their airport, for example, in some cases the airports have been hit. So the airport in Kuwait was hit. So if an airport's been attacked or the airspace is closed, then we can have the planes lined up to go, but we can't get them to land because we don't have the permissions to land there. So that's the challenge. But rest assured, we are confident that we are going to be able to assist every American. As I told you right now, we have about a little over 1,500, maybe closer to 1,600 Americans requesting assistance, and we know that we're going to be able to help them. It's going to take a little time because we don't control the airspace closures. That said, there may be more people out there that need help. We need to know who you are. So please, I'm asking the media, publicize the phone numbers and the website, because we need people to call in so we have their name, we have their contact information, we have their location and their request. So as these opportunities begin to open up, we can act very quickly to reach them and get them out of harm's way.
Mr. Secretary, I want to just clarify what you said. I want to clarify what you said, because you said...
There's nothing to clarify.
But you said I would get that...
No, but you have to read... If you're going to read the whole statement...
But your quote is about, we knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that would precipitate an attack.
Yeah, no, I understand. But listen, all right, let me understand. Yeah, but I had a very specific question from that gentleman, right?
The president said... Well, the president said that...
Hold on one second. I asked
he may have forced Israelis...
Okay, but let me answer, because this is my press conference. Sure. Okay. You asked me, I was asked a very specific question. So you guys can misrepresent it, but I was asked a very specific question yesterday. The bottom line is this. The president determined we were not going to get hit first. It's that simple, guys. We are not going to put Americans' troops in harm's way. If you tell the president of the United States that if we don't go first, we're going to have more people killed and more people injured, the president's going to go first. That's what he did. That's what the president will always do. He will always put the safety and security of our men and women in uniform and of all Americans before anything else. He's always going to do that, and that's what he did here. In addition to that, I would argue that this threat from Iran, they are hiding behind these missiles and hiding behind these drones. They wanted to reach a point where you couldn't touch them, and then they could do whatever the hell they wanted with their nuclear program. And there is no way in the world that this terroristic regime was going to get nuclear weapons, not under Donald Trump's watch.
So the U.S. attack
right.
nothing to do with Israel. It had nothing to do with Israel.
Go ahead.
This operation, there's a general question of why the president gave the green light, and then there's a question of why did it have to happen this weekend? Are you saying it had to happen this weekend because of that Israeli action?
No, this weekend presented a unique opportunity to take joint action against this threat. And we wanted this to have maximum success. We want this operation to be successful at achieving its objectives. I'll repeat the objectives. The president laid them out yesterday. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. It cannot have, and therefore it cannot have the things it was hiding behind to have a nuclear weapons program. What are those things? Number one, we are going to destroy their missiles and their missile launchers. We are going to destroy their capability to make these missiles and these launchers, and we are going to destroy their Navy. Those are the objectives, and this weekend, acting at this time, gave us the highest probability of success in achieving those objectives, and as the Department of War will brief you, We are on or ahead of schedule to do that.
So the U.S. attack would have happened no matter what? Would the U.S. attack have happened no matter what Israel is planning to do?
The House said Israel was going to act with or without
the president
the US.
had already made a decision to act on the timing. The president acted on the timing that gave us the highest chance of success. And that's what you're seeing play out right now. You're seeing it play out right now, and you'll see it in the days to come. We will systematically take apart their missile program. We will destroy their ability to sponsor terrorism, by the way. We will destroy their factories. We will destroy their Navy. Those objectives are going to be met. We're well on our way to meeting them. It will not be easy. There will be a price to pay for it, but that is a much lower price to pay than having a nuclear-armed Iran. I got to go brief these guys. Hold on. Yes.
Secretary.
Yes, ma'am.
Secretary, how heavily is the administration leaning into the 2001 AUMF for justification of these strikes?
What now?
How heavily is the administration
Well, that's
leaning
not our notification to Congress. Our notification, listen, let me explain to you guys this in simple English. Okay? Iran is run by lunatics, religious fanatic lunatics. They have an ambition to have nuclear weapons. They intend to develop those nuclear weapons behind a program of missiles and drones and terrorism that the world will not be able to touch them for fear of those things. And this is the weakest they've ever been. Now is the time to go after them. The president made the decision to go after them, take away their missiles, take away their Navy, take away their drones, take away their ability to make those things so that they can never have a nuclear weapon. That's why the president made this decision. It was the right decision. And the world will be a safer place when these radical clerics no longer have access to these weapons. You see how they're using them now. Imagine how they would use them a year from now if they had more of these. All right, I got time for one more. Yeah, go ahead.
What exactly was the threat?
Several Democrats criticized what you said and argued that
the question is, several Democrats criticize. They're going to always criticize. We've been doing this for years, guys. They come out. I'll tell you right now, they're going to come out after the briefing and say, we didn't hear anything. We have more questions than answers. You mark my words. But we still do these briefings. Go ahead.
Mr. Secretary, their criticism was on the timeline. They said that Israel is dictating the timeline for the United States.
No,
and as you know, several people on the right have also agreed with that. How would you respond to that?
Well, the United States made a decision. Under the President of the United States made a decision. This is intolerable. Iran cannot have these missiles, cannot have these drones, cannot threaten the world. The President said this is the weakest they've ever been. If we don't hit them now, a year from now, a year and a half from now, no one will be able to touch them, and they'll be able to do whatever they want. And he made a decision to go. And he made a decision to go in a joint operation because it gave us the highest chance of success, and he made the decision to go first because he concluded that we were not going to get hit first. We were not going to absorb a blow from them. We were going to go first. He was not going to run the risk that they could attack us before we could hit them, because in addition to costing lives, it would undermine the effectiveness of our operation. All right, guys, I got to go. Thank you.
Take a pass, Thank you. I have to be quick. Look, America, the American people do not want an endless war. The administration doesn't seem to know what it's doing. Every hour there's a different rationale as to why we're doing this. And America wants this president to pay attention to the problems at home, not the problems overseas, particularly when no one has any idea of what the real rationale is. It changes every hour.
DHS talks. Hi. You did an amazing job.
First time.
How are you guys?
Excuse me. If I get word that's actually posted down there, so if there are route changes or something, I'll have you kind of. Okay. Thank you.
I need this clear right here, so.
Yeah.
heard that they may be asking
Hey, did you do international? Sorry. Yeah, you need to get back. Okay, if you're dialed in, Atlanta should switch you. Okay.
Well, we'll try every opportunity.
Yeah, basically.
By the way, who was it that Rubio was talking to about the question the other day? I was watching that because we've seen Secretary Rubio bobbing and weaving so much in the last 48 hours. They can't make up their mind why they took the action they did, and so you get a different story every hour. And so I'm looking forward to this briefing, but what we've learned so far is you cannot believe a word that Donald Trump said, starting, of course, with what he said about keeping America out of war to begin with. But we'll find out more here.
Mics, we go to the mics. Did the administration detail what the end game is here about when this war may actually end and how they plan to achieve their objective?
I'm saying it's like I think we can all agree. I mean, find a senator in here that says we should never allow Iran to acquire a nuclear bomb. Have you know anyone that says they're okay with them having a nuclear weapon? I haven't met any of them. So for me, this entire thing was that end game is make sure that's destroyed, I'm sure. That's part of it, make sure there's no way they could ever acquire a nuclear bomb. And it seems that. And then also the other missile technologies for that. So everything that I've heard there, to me, it just essentially, there's no new shocking kinds of news or any of it.
But wasn't the nuclear program set back in June when the attacks initially happened? Why did this additional attack need to happen?
Well, that's part of the briefing.
What did they tell you?
Senator, are you comfortable with the fact that Congress was left out of the decision-making process?
Well, what does the War Powers Resolution at 73 say? It says that the president has to provide 48 hours of notification, and he's done that. And then they have up to 60 days, perhaps a 30 days extension. And there's no boots on the ground, and it's been into 100 hours so far. So where has anything been broken or they haven't made every standard?
How do you describe the fact that how do you describe the fact that you're the only Senate Democrat, though, with that position?
Because maybe I'm the Democrat. I'm aware that it's pretty toxic for a Democrat to say I happen to agree with the president on really anything at this point. But again, find someone that opposes this, saying they've all said we can never allow Iran to acquire a nuclear bomb. Then what's your, and that seems like that's happening. Why can't you just acknowledge that's a good thing? Why not? No. Why can't? Why can't you just say that? It's like, this is 47 years. It's like sanctions and treaties and all kinds of other negotiations and everything. Nothing's worked, and that's the case. So why can't we all just say the world is safer and it's more just now because of what this happens? You don't have to agree on everything, but it's like, yes, I'm the only Democrat because I'm not afraid of my base to just say, you know what, this was overall a good thing. You don't have to agree on everything. So I'm going to be honest. So, why can't you just acknowledge that one of the most evil people on the face of the earth was erased? That's a good thing.
Can't you do both? Can't you do both? And I think there are questions about the scope of the operation moving forward, how long it will last. 6 service members have already been
Well, I
killed.
mean, no one knows
The
exactly how
president
long
has
it's going, how it's going to last overall. I mean, that's who knows. But really, that's also what's really also undeniable is that Iran has seriously been degraded. You know, if they have a big shot to shoot, they would have done it by now, and they haven't. And now, really, all of this other kinds of small things, they're just cheap drones being fired off at random nations there. If anything, they continue to isolate themselves. If anything, you could see, like, a good opportunity to now move them more towards Abraham Accords. There are, you know, these small things, but where is all of things beyond those small kinds of things? Overall, Iran has been effectively degraded in a way where they really have limited, if any, capabilities at this point.
Senator, why shouldn't Congress assert its constitutional role and actually vote to declare war the way it did with Iraq and Afghanistan?
The last war we've actually declared was World War II.
No, Iraq and Afghanistan. There were AUMF.
Afghanistan. Okay, so for me right now, what is it now? The War Powers Resolution, 60 days, and we're 100 hours into this. Now, what's at this point?
Do you support the regime
and
change?
also, I want to say on this, it's like, you know, we can't keep our government open. We've shut it down for 45 days, and now the entire DH thing is shut down. You know, we can't even maintain our core responsibilities to keep our government open. You know, it's so right now.
Senator, would you change your position on war powers in terms of a ground invasion into Iran?
What? No, I'm saying it's like this is.
Should the U.S. have done more to protect Americans who are now stranded abroad? Israel received a warning on Friday before this attack for an authorized departure there, but there are many Americans in other countries now without.
Anything else?
Senator, do Americans have anything to be concerned about with regard to retaliation here domestically? Any cells that we need to worry about? Anything we need to worry about?
I don't have any specific kinds of intelligence on that, of course, but you know, our DHS system is shut down, so that's probably not great timing for that. And again, I'm the only Democrat that votes that's wrong to do that. Yeah, we all want to make some changes on ICE, but we all know that won't have any impact what they've done, and now it's shut down.
Do you support regime change inside Iran?
What?
Do you support the regime change inside Iran by President Trump?
Well, I thought that's part of, I mean, a regime change. It's like the top 55 of them were killed, and I think they just blew up 80 of the randoms mullahs, too, which, I mean, that was pretty great, actually. So, all right.
Senator, administration officials concluded to...
Wait a second. This is the short person's view of the war. So the briefing was very informative. I feel like this administration has been as transparent as you possibly can be without compromising war plans, so I want to congratulate them in terms of keeping us informed. My takeaway, quite frankly, is the Iranians have a strategy of trying to create regional chaos, to shut down airports, hit hotels, drive up economic cost, to see if the region will break and sue for peace. I've been on the phone all day with our Arab allies, and quite the opposite is unfolding. So I'm here to tell you the good news for me is I think the regional partners, the Arab partners, are going to be more involved, not less. They're not going to break. They're going to get in the fight in a more direct way. And Iran made a major miscalculation by attacking Kuwait and Qatar and Saudi Arabia. The countries now are more intent than ever to end the threat forever. So what I see in the coming days is more capability directed at the regime that's non-American, more planes flying that are non-Americans, more missile capability brought to the fight by our allies. So the ability to inflict harm on the regime is going to increase, not just because we're more committed to ending this, because we're going to have more partners to do that. Now, so what's the goal here? The goal is to make sure that when this is over, this regime cannot build ballistic missiles to hit America or terrorize the region. That when this conflict is over, they cannot continue to support Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, the terrorist network, and they can never go back in the nuclear business. One of the things that really got President Trump going the most was after Midnight Hammer, we found that they were trying to regenerate their nuclear program. After basically months of negotiation, it was pretty clear that they're wedded to the capability they need to inflict terror, that the regime's goal is always to inflict terror and to push their religious agenda through force. And the missile buildup is designed to give them immunity in terms of developing their nuclear program. If we waited much longer, they're doing 100 a month. The idea of imminent threat to me is an odd thing. Who wants to let a homicidal maniac be able to get to the imminent stage of hurting you? If somebody is threatening my family, wants to rape your wife and burn down your house and kill your children, I don't want to wait till they get to the gun store and the gas station. Since 1979, this regime has been dedicated to chaos through their religious agenda. In 1983, 220 Marines were killed by Hezbollah in Lebanon, 18 sailors, 100 injured. Roadside bombs coming out of Iran have maimed and killed hundreds, if not thousands, of Americans. They mean it when they say death to America. I'm glad we didn't let it go further. I'm glad we didn't let them build more missiles. I'm glad we didn't let them regenerate after Midnight Hammer. So the idea that you're going to let a homicidal maniac get to the imminent stage, to me, is misplaced. So I've never felt better about how this ends. It's not if they fall, it's when they fall. It's not us alone, it's us with the region. Europe is now getting into the game. So I want to compliment President Trump for starting something that the world is now gravitating to. This regime is in its death throes. The amount of firepower coming in the next day or two from us is going to be overwhelming. And when you add to the mix the Arab capability, then it's going to be overwhelming. The demise of this regime is at hand. And the goal is to make sure they can never be a threat like they were before.
Senator, how do you know that the next regime that may come in may not be more hardline than the last regime?
I don't think 32,000 people went to their death to be hard-ass. That's really offensive to the people in the street, that they want a country that's more crazy. Why are they in the street? They don't like living under the Ayatollah. These people are not facing guns without arms because they like what's going on. To think that the protesters want more Ayatollah is really offensive to them. Here's what's going to happen.
Maybe they won't be able to
Just wait a
control
minute. The idea of the Ayatollah being our friend is zero. The idea of the Ayatollah giving up his nuclear ambitions were zero. He's a religious fanatic. You could say that about Hitler. I bet somebody asked in 1935, what happened if we killed Hitler? God, I wish we'd have known. It will only get better. Now, what happens is up to the Iranian people, not me, not anybody here. They have a chance to take their country back if this regime falls, and I think they want it back in a different way. The idea that these people would want the same thing after sacrificing really is short-sighted. It's offensive to them. So, to the world, to Europe, get behind the protesters. They're your best chance to have a stable Iran. They're not going to repeat the mistakes of the past, I don't believe, but if they do, we'll do what we did in the past. We'll deal with the threat. So the idea that you, like taking Hitler out, if somebody asked that in 1935 and say, let's don't do it, boy, was that a big mistake. It would be a big mistake to let this regime continue to march toward a nuclear weapon, to build more missiles. So the regime is going to fall, and what follows will be up to the Iranian people, and I think it's going to be better. And the biggest prize of all is that when they fall, I talked to Saudi Arabia today, when this regime collapses, there will be a sprint toward normalization. Bibi said last night that he wants to work with Saudi Arabia to take up where they left off under President Biden, and I want to give him credit for trying to expand the Abraham Accords to Saudi-Israel, which is the biggest prize of all. So this regime is going to collapse. It's not if, it's when. And when that happens, there'll be a gateway to peace that no one ever envisioned. So, President Trump, I'm glad you did it when you did it. If we waited much longer, we'd have a bigger threat on our hands, and we're on the verge of a new dawn.
Senator, is there a need at any point for Congress to take a vote or have any role here?
Absolutely. Here's what I think. Normalization will require Congress MBS wants a treaty with the United States. Well, that requires 67 votes. There may be a supplemental coming. I think there will be a supplemental. We'll have to approve that. Now, let me tell you, I've been a military lawyer most of my adult life. The War Powers Act has been viewed as unconstitutional by every president, Republican, Democrat, since its passage. Why? Because it says after 60 days of combat operations, military operations, they must terminate unless Congress approves. You're shifting the power from the commander-in-chief to the Congress. If we don't like a military operation, we can cut off funding. But the War Powers Act is an unconstitutional shift of authority from the president, and it would create 535 commander-in-chiefs. It's going to fail tomorrow. Now, if you want to have a vote as to whether or not you approve this operation without a War Powers Act, that's fine with me. I don't mind people being on record as to whether or not they think this is a good idea. I do mind Congress becoming the commander-in-chief.
Senator, you were extremely critical after Benghazi, after the Afghanistan withdrawal. There are thousands of Americans stuck in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Do you think the administration is doing enough to make sure they get
Yes, Marco's doing a good job. Here's who you contact to get out. We're trying to send flights in. You pay now or you pay later. If they get a nuclear weapon, they would use it. They keep trying no matter what we do. Why? Because they want a nuclear weapon to enact their agenda. They want to purify Islam. They want to destroy Saudi Arabian Sunni Islam and then replace it with Shia Islam. That's what they say, not what I say. They have been building ballistic missiles at a rate that is just stunning. They've killed 32,000 plus of their people who've been protesting, and they support Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis. One thing to President Trump, in case you're watching. In 1983, Ronald Reagan sent Marines and sailors to try to police and deal with the Lebanese civil war. They were at the end of the runway. Hezbollah attacked the Marine barracks, killed 220 Marines, 18 sailors, and wounded 100 others. Ronald Reagan, who I admire and love, withdrew and never did anything about it. So I'm calling on President Trump today. Join Israel to attack Hezbollah. Avenge the Marines. America never forgets. Those 220 Marines and 18 sailors' families, we want to go after the infrastructure that killed your loved ones. There are IRGC assets in Beirut as I speak. President Trump, come up with a new operation called Simplify. Fly with Israel and go after Hezbollah, who has American blood on its hands. Not only take the mothership of Iran down, also take the proxy of Hezbollah, settle the score, even the account.
Senator, what is your best assessment of what the timeline looks like now?
I feel that's a good question.
And then also, how are we not going to be drawn into a larger ground operation?
There is no reason right now to use troops, but if we need them, the goal is victory. Listen to this. Donald Trump is seeking victory against the Iranian regime. Who's going to win a war between the Iranian regime and the United States? We are. We're going to win this conflict. We have Arab partners today that we didn't have yesterday. So this is going to end with us winning and the Ayatollah's regime going down. What happens next is up to the Iranian people. So what I would tell the American people, pull for victory. Hope that this works well. Pull for the idea that the Iranian people can live without the Ayatollah, that they can be a new Iran emerges from the ashes of this regime. It would be a good thing for the world. At the end of the day, the region is committed to seeing it through. Iran is trying to break their will. It has backfired. So the timetable has shifted. I think the demise of the regime is far more likely to come quicker today than it was yesterday because we have more partners today.
Are we Senator, weeks?
I don't know. You need to ask the military people. And, you know, in World War II, they didn't ask how long would it take. They said, we're going to go to Berlin, we're going to go to Tokyo, we're going to protect our life. See, what you got to understand, that the regime in Iran would kill everybody in this room if they could. It's not about Republicans or Democrats. It's about Americans. They're religious fanatics. They want to kill all the Jews. They want to destroy Sunni Islam. They want to come after us. So we need to have the approach to this like we did in World War II. This is a terrible mothership of terrorism regime that's killed Americans since 1979, terrorized the region, and it's on the verge of collapse. And I want to congratulate Donald Trump and his team for putting together the most impressive military plan I have ever seen. What's coming in the coming days from us is going to be a lot bigger than it's been in the last couple of days. The Arabs are in the fight now, so stay tuned. What's coming toward the remnants of the regime is going to be overwhelming. The liberation of Iran is at hand. The gateway to peace is about to open. Things that I've been working on with President Biden can now materialize. The biggest prize in the region would be to end the Arab-Israeli conflict. That will never happen as long as Iran is around. October the 7th was designed to stop what President Biden and I were trying to do, build on the Abraham Accords. Iran's worst nightmare is the Arabs and the Israelis make peace because they're not a peace-loving people. It's a cult of death. We're going to take up where we left off when this regime collapses, and I think the biggest prize of all from taking the regime down is that those who want to make peace in the region will be able to do it without being threatened by the mothership of terrorism.
Senator, who were the
I don't know if there's anything left to be said.
There is.
He covered that.
Who were the three candidates who the president had in mind as possible leaders of Iran? Did they know that they were candidates for this? Had he communicated with them? And how did they wind up getting killed in the offensive?
I'm not going to get to specifics of that because some of that was classified, but I know there was some communications with hopeful, possible individuals that we could have a relationship with, and I wouldn't say that, not all of them are still kicking. I would say that maybe there might be some, but some of that's classified.
How did that happen?
Sometimes you're at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Are there measures being taken not to eliminate other possible alternatives to leadership?
This is war, and we're taking out the threat. And if you're part of the threat, then you're a target.
How did the administration describe the end game here?
Well, I think they laid out a very precise of what the threat looks like, and we're going to continue to be in the fight until they can no longer threaten the United States like they have for 47 years. Keep in mind, 7 presidents has passed on this opportunity. This threat's been around since November of 1979 when Jimmy Carter was in office. They attacked us as late as through their proxies or directly as late as June of 2025. They've killed thousands or injured thousands of Americans for 47 years. As long as the threat is still there, we're going to continue to be going after them.
Given that this could be a sustained campaign and that American service members are being killed, why didn't Congress vote to declare war? Your constitutional authority to declare war. Why didn't you do that?
Let me ask you, why didn't the Democrats that's asking this same question demand that Barack Obama do that in 2016 when he bombed 6 countries and dropped 26,000 bombs from Syria to Pakistan? I'm talking about the same situation. The president under Article 2 has broad authorities to keep Americans' interests safe home and abroad. There's no question, not one of you guys can question the fact that they haven't killed through proxies or injured through proxies thousands of Americans for 47 years. This was a threat that no other president was willing to stand up against and eliminate like President Trump. So thank God he's finally got that back.
Senator, the White House said,
let's go here.
Thank you. Senator Murray, after leaving upstairs with Democrats, said, I've heard 5 different rationales and objectives about this war.
Who said this?
Senator Murray.
Chris Murphy? Or Murray?
No, Murray.
Murray.
Patty Murray.
Patty Murray, yeah.
What is your understanding of the objective here?
I don't remember her asking a question while I was there, so I think the objective was pretty laid out. They want to make sure that the ability for them to strike us anywhere at any time is gone. No way they'll be able to make a nuclear weapon or enrich uranium again to take out their navy so they can't disrupt commerce in the shipping lanes and to take out their ability to restock and rebuild their missiles and drones. That's the objective here. We're going to eliminate the threat that's been threatening us for 47 years. And today's a weaker Iran than it has been in probably a decade. If we would have waited another year, this picture could look totally different, completely different. And so the opportunity and the timing was right, and we have a president in the office that had the backbone to do it.
Senator, do you have any concerns about this Iran operation, any at all?
No. Listen, what my concern is that we have lost thousands of individuals over 47 years, and we haven't done anything about it. This threat was not going away. I don't think anybody can argue that this regime needed to be removed. And what we have done now for the Iranian people is give them a choice. We gave them a choice to say, we want our country back. We want to go back to the country that we had prior to the Ayatollah in 1979. We want to go back to the country where we had women in the workplace, in the professional workplace. We want to go back to the era when we could have women elected to public office, go back to where the great riches that live in Iranian soil would be able to be shared with the mass people there, not just used to sponsor terror around the world. And so we're giving the Iranian people an opportunity to get their country back. At the same time, we're eliminating the threat that's been threatening the United States.
Senator,
I'll go over here.
You mentioned the objectives. Did they give you a sense of how long it would take to meet those objectives?
No. Well, yes, but I'm not going to talk about a timeline. Yes.
Senator, if
this won't be a drawn-out conflict, that American boots won't be needed on the ground, or do you believe they could be?
We're not eliminating the options. We're going to continue to do whatever we can to eliminate this threat to the United States.
Senator, if Iran posts
I know. I got you a bunch of times. Let me get to people who haven't asked a question. Yeah, I'll go here and then I'll go there.
Is there any point at which you feel like Congress should take a vote on this? Like, if you do support the operation, and you know, why not vote to authorize force like if we did in Iraq and Afghanistan?
I think that can be debatable, but we're not going to take away the authority of the President of the United States to be able to be the Commander-in-Chief and keep Americans' interest safe. That's the role of the Commander-in-Chief. We don't need 535 Commander-in-Chiefs. The Commander-in-Chief is the President of the United States, and he has a duty in Article 2 to be able to protect American interest, and he is initiating that, and he is doing that with great authority and great effect. Yes.
Senator, there have been significant concerns about munitions stockpiles. Senator Graham just talked about larger strikes over the next 2 days. Are there enough munitions for the next 2 days?
I will tell you that on the briefing of we are in good shape. That's what they said. We're in good shape. I don't know where that came from, because you've never heard this administration. You haven't heard the Joint Chiefs. You haven't heard anybody bring up that concern. So that's some concern that's been planted by some, either unrational individual or left media that's throwing that out. We are in great shape. The president has everything at his disposal to be able to do what we need to do, and we'll continue to do so. Yes.
Senator, you talked about giving the Iranian people a choice, but are you confident that enough of the regime and its infrastructure has been taken out and the power back to the court?
I said this from the very push-go. My very first interview I did once this conflict started is that we're not fighting the war for the Iranian people. We're giving them an opportunity to fight their war. If they want to take back the country, they can do that. What we're doing is eliminating and weakening this administration or this regime, and then it's up to the rest of it. That's up to the Iranian people. This wasn't about regime change. If this was about regime change, we would have taken them out during the 12-day war. The president made it very clear, we know where you're at, and we could take you out if we chose to. We gave diplomacy an option, and diplomacy didn't work. Yes.
Iranian people are watching you. What is your message to them?
This is your time. This is your time. This is your country. You have a great country. We're not at war with you. We actually love you. You have an opportunity to get back to the country you used to have, and we want that relationship with you. We actually desire that relationship, to have that relationship we had prior to 1979, but it's up to you. This is your time. It's on your shoulders to win back your country.
Senator, what is the plan for the nuclear sites? We've seen mostly conventional military sites.
Well, I mean, we obliterated that during the 12-day war, but we know they were trying to rebuild it. We will not leave until we neutralize any threat that could possibly come back from the Iranian regime. God forbid they're still in office. All right?
How challenging will it be to get at those ballistic?
Yes. No, we didn't underestimate anything.
Do you think that the administration should have done more before this to evacuate Americans or give Americans?
We did everything we needed to do. We were very strategic on understanding what their possibilities are and what their capabilities were, and we have completely overwhelmed it. We have complete air supremacy. We've taken over their ability to fight back. We knew that they had what they called a Nazar plan in place, where they had predetermined targets, which we call the death switch, where they're continuing to shoot at targets that they have as long as the munitions are there. We've also seen that their capability to launch has greatly diminished because we've been going after what we'd call not all the arrows, but going after the archers.
You'll concede this is war. You'll concede this is war.
We haven't declared war. They declared war on us, but we haven't.
War, Secretary Hicks said
no, we haven't declared.
Just now you said this is war.
They've called it war.
They've called it war. What I was saying. Okay, well that was a misspoke. What I was saying that they've declared war on us, but war is ugly. It always has been ugly. But we're at We're taking out a regime that's been trying to attack us for quite some time.
But you're not conceding this is war.
We have declared war. So if we haven't declared war, then I don't see that. The president hasn't asked us to declare war yet, but they have declared war on us. We're just simply fighting the threat that's been at our door for 47 years. I've already answered the question.
Do you believe that ask could be coming, that an ask from the president to declare war?
I don't know if that's necessary, because, as I said, we're not at war with the Iranian people. I made that very clear just a while ago when I was asked to talk directly to the Iranian people. I said, we're not at war with you. We are done fighting against this murderous regime that's been nipping at our heels for 47 years and killing thousands of people. It's time to eliminate them. All right?
Was there any talk about how to keep oil prices down?
No, we didn't talk about any of the economic things. It was strictly on the conflict taking place.
Senator, what's your understanding of what the imminent threat was that caused Trump to decide that he needed to launch this attack?
Well, we've known the threat is going to be there. They've threatened us. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So you can choose a numerous amount of options. I think you heard Witkoff came out. I think there was some report that said that that during the negotiations, and I saw this on public, so this wasn't discussed in there, that there was that they had enough nuclear weapons enough nuclear enrichment to be able to load 11 weapons. They were claiming that during the negotiations. I didn't ask that question in there, but we know that they were trying to reach us, and we know they continued to hit us. And so it wasn't a matter of if, again, it was just a matter of when they did it.
It wasn't like a specific thing, a specific imminent threat that you're aware of?
Well, there may have been something to discuss, but I'm not. If it was, I'm not going to discuss it here because it was classified.
Did they specify what the next steps were, or were they general in terms of the
Yes, they did specify.
Yes.
Booker. Do you want this out?
Nate, can you grab the can? Thank you.
Explain what the imminent threat was that authorized Trump to act.
I mean, the point is there was no imminent threat. There clearly was no imminent threat. This was the president on one hand that said to the American people, I completely eviscerated their nuclear capabilities, and now he's saying that they did not. So that was the problem. We had a classified briefing that left me utterly astonished at the lack of information they provided to justify the hundreds of billions of dollars of cost and the American lives that are being lost. All while we have a president that is literally cutting health care from millions of Americans, and that is literally taking away programs for our veterans and programs for our children's school lunches.
Sorry, just to clarify, because yesterday they came out of the Gang of Eight briefing and said that they made a case that Israel was going to act unilaterally, and so Trump had to act to protect our assets.
This is the typical.
Is that what they said?
This is the typical Donald Trump. Is they jump around until they think they found an explanation that could satisfy the most people. They have changed their justification for this time and time again, and we got nothing that even approached a justifiable reason for the president to commit an act of war by attacking another nation.
There are times you go. There are times. Hold on. There are times when you go into a classified session and you walk out and you have a better understanding about the gravity of the situation and the rationale behind the military action. This is not one of those times. We remain as confused as the American people are. They have had 3 or 4 or 5 justifications for this act of war over the last 4 or 5 days, and nothing in this classified session alleviated that confusion.
How did they specify what the objective was? They offered no clear explanation of why we got into the war. They offered no clear end game to this conflict. They have not answered the most basic questions. And the reality is, from securing nuclear fissile material to the challenges we were going to have in any kind of aftermath, to whether they're asking for regime change or not, the reality is they do not have an end game. They do not have a justification for getting into it. And this is a military action that's going to cost Americans hundreds of billions of dollars. At the same time, here at home, they're driving up costs from everything from gasoline to overall energy. They're taking away health care from millions of people. In what way is this justifying what he promised to do, which was not to get us into entanglements into foreign wars, as well as in making sure we're taking care of Americans' concerns about rising costs. And the last thing I just want to say is all of this is happening in the context of a president that continues to thrash the Constitution and not come to Congress for any kind of authorization for these.
If the War Powers vote fails, what can Democrats do?
What were you told about?
Somebody else.
Try to overthrow me. Eddie, sorry about that.
What do you say to Republicans who are saying that there's no need for any sort of authorization here? Because this is not unlike what happened in Libya, when there was no congressional authorization during those attacks, and the Democrats didn't raise a fuss back then.
We did raise a fuss. I mean, many of us publicly called for there to be a war authorization debate, so check the record. This is the most significant military action that this country has taken since the Iraq War. It is much bigger and will be much bigger than Libya. They told us in there that this is an open-ended operation that hasn't even really started in earnest yet. There will be more Americans killed. They refuse to take off the table the insertion of ground troops. This is going to make the operation in Libya look like child's play. There is no question this is war. They have contempt for the American people. They have contempt for the American people because they think that they can carry out the biggest war in the Middle East since Iraq and Afghanistan without a single vote, without a single discussion in the public. I was just shocked by the way in which they, A, are dismissing the role that the American people play in deciding when we go to war, and how clearly committed they are to an open-ended engagement with no end in sight.
If the War Powers vote fails, what can Democrats do? What can Congress do to stop the president from engaging?
We shouldn't be acting like this is business as usual. We shouldn't be proceeding to legislation, providing votes to proceed to legislation until they put an authorization for military force on the floor of the United States Senate. This is as serious as it gets. This is war and peace. They told us in that room that there are going to be more Americans that are going to die, that they are not in the short run going to be able to stop these drones that are going to continue to fly into the Middle East. We have to have a debate in the United States Senate on an authorization of military force. It will likely fail. It will likely fail, and we shouldn't be voting to proceed to other pieces of legislation until we get a debate on this deeply unpopular, immoral, and illegal war with Iran.
Wouldn't the AUMF of 2001 cover this anyway?
No.
Why not?
No.
I mean,
Senator Fetterman was just here, and I asked him why he's the only Democrat who's praising these strikes and also the only Democrat committed to voting against the War Powers Resolution. He said it's because I'm not afraid of my base.
Well, the last poll said that 75% of the American public don't want war with Iran. The American people do not want the United States going back into war in the Middle East. The Republican base doesn't want this. The Democratic base doesn't want this. Independent voters don't want this. Nobody in America is asking for their gas prices, their grocery prices, their construction prices to go through the roof. Nobody's asking in this country for more American soldiers to die in a war of choice in the Middle East. This isn't a question of, a political analysis of one party versus another. This is the American people saying clearly they don't want this. That's why we should have a vote, because I think it's a really difficult vote, much more difficult than a war powers vote, for senators to go on the record and proactively say they want war with Iran. If that vote comes before the Senate, I don't think it can pass.
So you said they described an open-ended conflict. What can you say about the objective in terms of the end game, what the end game is, how much it will cost, and how much damage Americans will sustain in their assets overseas?
I have no idea what the objective is, and I didn't get any additional clarity. They said what they have said publicly, that they are going after certain weapons systems. But if you don't remove the leadership and the same people stay in charge, they will just rebuild those destroyed weapons systems. The only alternative is to literally run constant overflights, constant bombing campaigns, which would bankrupt the United States and end up with a lot of Americans getting killed. There's no history of an air campaign only being able to accomplish the objectives that they are listing. All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
They give a cost. They give a cost.
I'm the senior Democrat on defense appropriations, and I represent the state of Delaware, where the now 6 Americans who've died in service to our nation will return sometime in the next 2 days. I expect that the Pentagon will come forward with a supplemental request for funding, and I will continue to support our troops and to make sure we are making all the investments we can to keep them and their families safe. But we need an open hearing so that you and the American people can get questions answered about the failures in planning that led to some of the challenges, the losses and mistakes in this war so far, so that we can get a clearer answer on how long this war will last and what its real objectives are, and so that we can get answers to the American people about how to get their loved ones out of harm's way. My office and many others is getting urgent calls from people who are stuck in the region, who are not currently able to get out, and there's more that must be done urgently to help civilians relocate out of harm's way, as long as we're being told that this war will continue indefinitely.
Are there concerns about munitions stockpiles being low? Do they address that in there?
That was discussed, but I won't get into that in any detail.
You said the failures. What failures specifically are you referring to that they've experienced so far in this war?
Look, I think the administration took months to assemble a third of our Navy in the region to plan for and prepare for a war with Iran. And I think a better job needed to have been done about informing, preparing, relocating our diplomats, the families, the civilians on our bases and facilities. They're moving quickly to try and relocate them now that the war has begun. But the way we got into this war, I think, put the principal decision in another country's hands rather than ours, and did not lead to preparations in advance of the war starting that protected as many Americans as possible.
What is your understanding as to how much of the regime has actually been taken out? We just heard Mullen and Graham say that the Iranian people have the opportunity to fight for themselves, essentially. Is enough of the regime gone for them to do that?
I'm stunned if they said that, because look, there's 1 million people in the Iranian security and military apparatus that are fully capable of repressing civilians who come out to protest in the streets. And I think we need to be careful about creating the mistaken impression that while we encourage the Iranian people to pursue a democratic form of government in the future, there's no clear commitment that I'm aware of for us to send any assistance, to send troops or to send arms that would allow them to actually defend themselves against a very aggressive Iranian regime.
Sorry, he said that the Iranian people have the opportunity to rise up from within. Is enough of the regime gone for the Iranian people to do that?
I've heard nothing that suggests that's the case.
Have they picked a successor yet?
I've heard nothing that clarifies what the plan. There is no clarity about the plans going forward.
What about ground? Yesterday, Secretary Rubio said there is not a plan right now to facilitate the next iteration of an Iranian government. So it's just a military plan.
That's critical. There is not a plan.
Well, he said it's not part of their goals right now.
Right.
Those
are two different statements.
Does that comport with what you've heard in there, that the goal is purely military and it's not to facilitate a regime change or whatever comes next?
This briefing was principally focused on military, the events of the last 100 hours, and where we are in terms of military objectives. There was not a robust discussion of political objectives. That is exactly the sort of thing that we need an open hearing about, because as you remember, the war in Iraq had an initial phase that apparently went quite well, mission accomplished, and then turned into a regime building, a nation building phase. That's where I think our greatest risk is, where the greatest risk for civilians in Iran is, and where the greatest lack of clarity in terms of planning and resources. I'll remind you, we used to have resources like Voice of America Farsi, like USAID's Middle East democracy programs that help support the opposition in authoritarian regimes in the region. For a variety of reasons, the chaos of Doge either substituted, defunded, suspended, or cut off those programs, and so there are not as many Iranians able to access the internet, able to communicate with each other, able to get reliable information, or informed about their options for trying to rise up today as there should be. Thank you all very much.
What do you expect?
Thank you. It's still coming out.
I mean, Italy has been evacuating, France is evacuating, Ukraine is evacuating.
Good question. Okay.
Can they thank Elon for that?
Maybe.
Guys.
He's literally said the same thing 4 different times.
I just want to say I am more fearful than ever after this briefing that we may be putting boots on the ground and that troops from the United States may be necessary to accomplish objectives that the administration seems to have, but I also am no more clear on what the priorities are going to be of the administration going forward, whether it is destroying the nuclear capacity of Iran or simply the missiles or regime change or stopping terrorist activities. And I think the administration owes it to the American people to have briefings not just for members of Congress, but for the American public. Nothing here should have been classified. It should be available to the American people.
Do they describe it? Marco Rubio said yesterday, and he's trying to clean it up, that it was Israel that was about to attack Iran, which prompted the United States to act to prevent any sort of reciprocation from Iran. Was that the way they described it in here?
I will give you my impression, which is that there is still no evidence, none, of an imminent threat that would justify an attack on Iran. No imminent threat to the United States has been set forth to me, but more important to the American people.
But was it Israel's?
I'm not going to go into the substance. I can't go into the substance. Thank you.
Once again, the answers are very unsatisfying. They have shifting goals, different goals all the time, different answers every day. And I am truly worried about mission creep. When there's no set plan, when you can't hear day after day, we're going to do this, 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 and this, and these are the reasons why, you end up with an endless war, you end up with mission creep, you end up with all kinds of problems. And so the answers are not satisfying, and what's really needed is a public debate so the American people, who already are very much against this, can see what we have seen.
Would you support a supplemental funding request for this war?
Look, the bottom line is they haven't made the request yet. I'm not going to comment on it, but the bottom line is that before you can feel satisfied about a supplemental, and I haven't seen it, you have to know what the real goals are and what the end game is.
How much will it cost, you know?
No.
Mayor Schumer, do you think Israel, forced the U.S.'s hand here, boxed the U.S. in on this?
Look, no one wants a nuclear war. No one wants a nuclear Israel, but we certainly don't want an endless war, plain and simple. What did I say?
Nuclear Israel.
Oh, no, got it. Let me say that again. No one wants an endless war, but we certainly don't want a nuclear Iran. That's for sure. Okay?
At what point does the lack of DHS funding become a national security?
Take Mulligan.
That's true.
There's a clear directive there. There's about 1,600 Americans that are there, and we've been notified on what to do and how to contact, and they've got something set up within the State Department to contact. So that's pretty clear.
That was something Secretary Rubio talked through in there.
Do what?
That was something Secretary Rubio talked through in the briefing.
Yeah.
Sir, is there any point at which you feel like, if this goes on or if ground troops are needed,
Right.
that the administration needs to come to Congress and ask for authorization?
I think it's been pretty clear that the administration said all along that we don't think ground troops are going to be needed.
So if they did want, they did not say that to us in the Senate, just so you know. It was pretty clear, and Rubio yesterday said he wouldn't rule it out. So what I'm asking you is more whether, if it does become necessary to use ground troops, do you feel like at that point Congress needs to vote?
Yeah, I don't support putting ground troops in over there. I don't think it's necessary.
But did they say anything about ground troops in the briefing? Did they rule it out?
Now, if I told you, then I'd be telling what happened in a double secret meeting. I'd be violating
So
my...
the senators are okay with that, though?
Did they convince you that Iran...
It's a trick, man. That guy's always trying to trip me up over there. Thought you were my friend, man.
Did they convince you that Iran posed an imminent threat?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, since they took our embassy, they were responsible for the embassy, for the Marine Corps losing 220 people. They were in the Iraqi war. A lot of the armaments were supplied by Iran. They hit a ship where I believe four sailors died in 2000. So yeah, and just every little conflict. And the Hezbollah has been their surrogate army out there that's killing people. So and they gouge little girls' eyes out that want to wear makeup, and little boys that get on Twitter, they hang them. They throw homosexuals off of buildings. Women that get raped, they stone them to death. These people are archaic, man. They're demonic.
Sir, what do you say to MAGA voters who are concerned about what?
I get you. I can't hear you, ma'am.
Guys are done after Thursday with no DHS deal.
Right. Well, that's on the Democrats. If they want to play ball, they can. Here we are in the middle of a national security issue, and they're shutting down DHS, which will shut down TSA, which has nothing to do with the other, because they don't want our agents wearing masks and having their names so they can be harassed and threatened, which they have been at over 1,000% increase. Secretary Homan told us that. Yes, ma'am.
I was just going to ask, what do you say to MAGA voters who are concerned right now about another forever war, about Americans who are dying overseas and are being told to expect more casualties?
I would say stay concerned. I mean, be concerned, be vigilant, hold our feet to the fire, keep us honest on that issue.
Even when it comes to Trump's decisions on this?
Absolutely, ma'am. Nobody's above your reproach. Just don't tell the president I said that. I got you. I get you, and I'll get you next, ma'am. Go ahead, brother.
Senator Lindsey Graham is now calling for the U.S. to start bombing Lebanon in response to the Hezbollah IDF action.
Lindsey hadn't seen a fist fight he hasn't wanted to turn into a bombing raid, so I just take it with a grain of salt, dude. Yes, ma'am.
We saw reports that
That's a good quote.
the next supreme leader has been chosen.
Do what?
Apparently, the next supreme leader of Iran, according to reports, has been chosen. It's the
Yeah,
son of Khamenei. What does that signal to you?
I've seen a lot of that. I've also seen that they eliminated their about 40 of them in one hit. So I would be very cautious on what I believe. I mean, maybe they're going to elect him as the leader, but there's only 20 people that are going to follow him. You got to realize about less than 20% of the people of Iran are of the radical Islamic faith. Most of them are like y'all.
Congressman, what was the tone of the meeting?
I thought it was very positive. I mean, of course, the Democrats were they were angry that some of them were angry that Secretary Rubio talked over 1 minute because they were only going to get a minute. I heard some saying, it's just the usual politics. They're for war under Obama and Clinton. They're not for any kind of conflict under Trump. So it's just pure politics.
We started discussing a renewed appropriations bill for the munitions gap.
Well, apparently we don't need it right now, is what they were saying. So.
Congressman, this is a different topic, but Congresswoman Nancy Mace has introduced a privilege resolution on sexual harassment or that might come Thursday. Do you support that idea of disclosing?
If it doesn't pass, then I want to bring it up in the Doge committee. Yeah, I have no tolerance for any kind of abuse like that, ma'am. Did somebody else? I didn't want to get anybody. Everybody good?
Why do Democrats say that the president needs authority to bomb Iran? But
they didn't say it under Obama or Clinton. Obama bombed 8 different countries, I believe. It's just politics. That's all it is, dude. They don't like Trump. I can't decide whether they hate Trump more than they hate the country. One of the two. I can't decide. They kind of go back and forth. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Were you in a fraternity, dude? You look like a fraternity guy. You got that look.
On the vote that Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie are forcing, how are you going to vote on that?
I don't support what they're moving forward with.
You're not going to force Congress to vote on war powers?
No.
I have a quick follow-up to when you're talking about Americans who are trying to get home from the Middle East, the scrambled depart now for 14 countries. Did officials give a sense of how many Americans are in those countries?
Yeah, I think it's less than 2,000 that we know of. That's what we're told in the area. So, but I could have misheard that.
Do you think the administration needs to be very proactive in getting those people out?
Oh, absolutely. I think they are. They set up a special bureau at the right before they started bombing.
Are they going to do an evacuation with U.S. planes?
I mean, well, you just have to get that from somebody else. How about that? I'm sorry.
Get Americans out before this started. They signaled to Israel.
It would have signaled to the other side.
They signaled to Israel on Friday. They authorized a departure for Israel to get Americans out of.
Ma'am, if you're in the Middle East or if you're in Mexico, I think you need to reevaluate. You've been watching too many dadgum movies because that is a volatile area. I wouldn't allow my daughter to cross the border. And I dig your Converse high tops, Chuck Taylors. I used to wear those all we could afford. Now it's a fashion statement, so digging that. Anybody else? We good?
I have one last one. Hi, Congressman.
Hey, girl, what's happening? Come on up. Well, be careful.
Thanks.
Those
Hope
fancy
you're doing
shoes. I'm well. Except for all these reporters hassling me.
I know, right? Come on, guys.
That's all right.
I'm just curious, have intelligence officials briefed Congress at all on the possibility of Iranian sleeper cells here in America? Should U.S. citizens be concerned about retaliation within the U.S.?
I haven't personally, but I've been told by some. So, yeah, I mean, we had millions of people come over the border during the Biden administration that we don't know where they are. And, yeah, I'm worried about that. And I have been worried about that.
I actually have one more for you.
Oh, my gosh.
Especially Ratcliffe talk about the potential of arming Kurdish forces to help with an uprising in Iran. Was there
That was not discussed.
That was not in the briefing? Okay.
Everybody good? Thank y'all.
Thanks, guys.
And I'll always get to all your questions. I'm not one of these knuckleheads like, oh, no.
It wasn't just limited to the Hill and the offices here, that it actually includes political campaigns as well as lobbyists who might have been harassed by a member of Congress. So there'll be a vote. It was a privileged motion. There'll be a vote in the next 48 hours.
And you have heard from lobbyists and
I've heard from a number of people who are
that those
eager to,
instances
yes,
have happened.
yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Congressman Burchett was just saying he's unfair on this. He said that before, and it's the idea that you have as well. But he said, I want to make sure it's not just sort of random accusations, and I don't know how he'd legislate for that.
Well, the privilege resolution is broad. It's not just the investigations that have concluded, it's ones that are ongoing right now, and quite frankly, I don't give a damn. So this has been a hidden secret for a long time. Tomorrow I will subpoena in the Oversight Committee information on the slush fund. Can't get it through the privilege resolution, so we'll do it through the Oversight Committee to get information on how much money was paid out and for what reason out of that slush fund. Yeah. Any other questions?
Will that include names of people who are...
It will. My information redacts names of victims and witnesses, but not the names of the members of Congress.
Did Secretaries Hegseth and Rubio make the case for war?
Yes. This was in a top secret room, and so it was TSSCI, so I'm not going to go into the details. I do want to thank Secretary Ratcliffe, Secretary Rubio, Secretary Hegseth, Joint Chiefs General Kane for their information today. They've been very direct. They've been very succinct. And the information that we provided. I sit on the House Armed Services Committee, and I won't go into anything that was stated in that the meeting we're having right now, but I will tell you, based on briefings I've had all over the world on the House Armed Services Committee, the nation of Iran was further along and closer to getting a nuclear weapon than at any other point in world history. This needed to happen. It needed to happen now. I also want to send a special thank you and gratitude to the Gulf states for their work in supporting the United States and, quite frankly, supporting Israel, because every state in the Gulf wants to see a prosperous Middle East, and everybody knows there is not prosperity or peace in the Middle East if Iran has a nuclear weapon.
You're no on the War Powers Resolution?
I'm going to see how it reads. I mean, I haven't had a chance to look at it quite yet. I will be a no for now, but if this thing goes beyond a few weeks, I'm going to have a lot more concerns. Right now, I'm trusting the information that I heard in that briefing, in that classified briefing now. I feel very confident, but if this goes on for longer than what we estimate it will go on for, then I think that's a different conversation about purpose, intent, costs, successes, etc. But now I believe it's too soon. President Trump, and let me be very clear, President Trump is following the War Powers Resolution of 1973. He has not wavered from that. I would like to remind the press and those watching this now, this briefing, that there are other presidents who've done more. President Obama bombed 8 countries, didn't go to Congress to ask about it. I hope that this will be short. I hope it doesn't go on more than a couple of weeks, and if it does beyond that, I think that's a different conversation that we need to have based on purpose and length of time.
What about if ground troops get involved? Would that also be
if ground troops get involved, I think that's a very different conversation. That's not where we are today. That's not what I heard in the briefing, and again, I won't go into details because it was classified. I feel very good and very confident about where we are roughly just over 100 hours into the strikes and this conflict. I feel very good about the leadership team the president has assembled to take the lead here.
Yeah. You talked about the time frame. You don't expect it to go more than a few weeks, but what would you say to Republican voters who are really concerned about potentially another prolonged conflict? How would you?
I am concerned just as an American as well for the military families. I have family that are serving the military and including in our forces overseas, and so I would tell anyone that they have a duty to our nation. They've signed up and served. They are serving valiantly, and I believe our military understands the depth of the necessity and the timing of this, the imminence of this. It was very imminent, in my opinion, based on the information that I have, that this happened now and not later, because if we waited till later, Iran would have a nuclear weapon, and we cannot have that. There will not be peace in the world, peace in the Middle East, if Iran went nuclear. Thank you all.
Do you think your investigation from the ethics committee is without?
What's your impression on what you're hearing in there?
We got no additional information on what the imminent threat was. There were a lot of references to the 47 years of Iran being a problem. That is not imminent. That is in the past. Imminent means immediate threat to the U.S. That was just not addressed at all. And there's nothing, frankly, there's nothing that we got that you don't have.
Was there any discussion of munitions and whether or not there's enough to fight a war beyond a few weeks?
No, that was not addressed. But it's unclear how long this is going to be going on. I mean, this is definitely not a couple of days. They've been talking about 4 to 6 weeks publicly. But I have a hard time believing that that's all it's going to be. And I also think that there was very clearly, once again, nothing to the strategy of how we are thinking about this, other than, some, frankly, totally inadequate responses on what the real threat was. Also, I will say that there's 90 million people in Iran, civilians, and there's no discussion about how to rebuild Iran, what the United States' role would be in rebuilding once this destruction occurs. And I think that's also very troubling. That was a question that Representative Ansari raised. And I think that's also very troubling. But I think, overall, there is nothing that convinces me that there was any imminent threat, number one. Nothing that convinces me that this shouldn't have been brought to Congress if there was a real desire to go to war with Iran for some set of reasons. That should be debated. And one person saying that, in his opinion, this was the right thing to do is the tradition that we broke with of monarchs and kings making singular decisions to take their countries to war. That was what the founders debated and put into the Constitution to provide authority to Congress and Congress alone to make that decision. And we've already lost 6 people. It's been publicly stated, and it was stated in there again, that we will lose more. That's not just the way it is, as the president said. That is exactly the reason that Congress needs to be thinking about this, because the lives of our troops are very valuable to us, and we need to make sure we are assessing when we send our troops into war and taking that with the utmost seriousness that a congressional debate about this would allow for, but not a singular person deciding that it's time to go to war. Thanks, everybody.
Based on the questions that were asked in there, do you feel there are any Republicans who have real reservations about this?
It's hard to tell. There weren't very many Republicans that asked questions. It was mostly Democrats that were in line. I think there were certainly concerns from Republicans about American citizens who are in the region, and the State Department is arranging to try and get those folks out. But we do have people in the region who are stuck, and not until this morning was it announced that we would be arranging flights for those folks, but there are challenges of getting airspace and other things that restrict the ability for people who are there to get out. So I think there were some concerns around that. There was a question about AUMFs, but it wasn't clear to me what the exact question was. But not very many Republicans asked questions, and it was only an hour briefing. I mean, it's still going on, but I didn't feel like I was going to get anything that was of importance, so I'm leaving. But there were lots more Democrats in line to ask questions.
Congresswoman, today Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said that the homeland is less safe because DHS is still shut down, and now we've got this maybe war with Iran. Do you agree with that assessment? Does it add urgency to reopen DHS?
No. Kristi Noem has done such a terrible job of managing DHS and ICE and CBP, and the reality is we have a crisis right here at home on our streets with U.S. citizens being murdered, with people being detained without due process. Courts are ruling against DHS, and Kristi Noem has actually taken agents who should be working on critical security threats and assigned them to immigration. So there is a lot that is a problem. She's coming before us tomorrow. I'm sure we'll have a chance to ask her some of those questions tomorrow.
Are you not worried that more shooters like the Austin shooter will emerge?
I'm concerned about going forward.
Hello, I'm Congressman Brad Sherman. I'm the ranking member of the Middle East Subcommittee. I had a chance to address the War Powers Act, also called the War Powers Resolution. Every president since the 1970s has claimed that that War Powers Act was not constitutionally binding. But this is the first president that has to deal with the War Powers Act enforcement provisions that we've been adding since I authored them since 2012. Now, I don't know if this action is going to take more than 60 days. If it doesn't, then the president does not need an affirmative action by Congress. Now, the president is subject to a resolution by Congress requiring withdrawal, but we would expect that even if that passes the House, it would be, and the Senate, it would still be vetoed. So as far as the president needing affirmative action by Congress, that comes in at the 60th day. Other presidents have said they don't need it, but other presidents have not dealt with the provision in the Defense Appropriations Bill designed to enforce the War Powers Act. That provision says that no money shall be spent in contravention of the War Powers Act. So you have one area of the Constitution that is thought to be vague. That is war powers. The president is commander-in-chief. Congress has the right to declare war. But there's one part of the Constitution that is absolutely clear, and that is the president can only spend money that is appropriated by Congress and only for the purposes appropriated by Congress. So I brought to the attention of the entire panel there that if they were to violate this provision of the Defense Appropriations Bill, they could face criminal or civil personal liability. We hope very much that this action takes less than 60 days, in which case this provision would not be triggered.
Thank you. Thanks, Brad. Hi. It is very clear this is a war of choice by President Trump. There was no imminent threat against the American people, against American facilities or persons. This is a war that is going to be borne on the backs of working class Americans who have suffered, financed, fought over 20 years of war. Enough is enough. It is time for Congress to get involved, retake its constitutional authority, to return the American people back into the driver's seat on matters of war and peace. That is what this is about. It's also very clear this administration has no plan for the day after. They stumbled into this. They are trying to destroy the Iranian regime, and they have no plan for what comes next. History shows very clearly this does not end well.
What's being done about the Americans that are still stuck over there?
They are struggling to identify the Americans who are there. They asked for the assistance of members of Congress, assistance that we will provide, putting out guidance to our constituents about what needs to happen to evacuate as this conflict continues to spread throughout the region, because make no mistake, this is spreading and this is magnifying. It's getting worse, not better, so we're going to do everything possible to put information out to U.S. citizens in the region as to how they can connect with the State Department and get evacuated to safety.
You said you didn't hear anything about an imminent threat. Did they give you any sense about that? Did they try and make the case that Israel was already going to go in without us?
Well, I'm not going to go into the details in a classified briefing, but what I can tell you is historically, leading up to today, as a member of the Intelligence Committee and the Armed Services Committee, I have seen no evidence that there is an imminent threat against U.S. persons or facilities that would require a unilateral action by President Trump without consultation of Congress to initiate a conflict.
Why are Democrats do you expect it to look similar to the Iraq War and Afghanistan? Do you see any similarities or differences that you expect?
Well, I'm haunted by the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and every war is different. Iraq was different from Afghanistan. This is different from Iraq or Afghanistan. But the common strand to all of these is it's going to cost the American people a lot of money, and it's working class people that are going to have to do the fighting and dying and taking the burden of the decisions made by elites without any planning.
Why are Democrats putting a war power resolution under Trump, but they didn't do it under Obama when he bombed 8 countries?
Well, they should have, actually. Right? What was wrong then is also wrong now. I came here to Congress to do my job and to do my duty. to put the American people back in place in the driver's seat, to end endless conflicts, and that is what I'm going to do.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Congressman.
We just heard from Secretary Hegseth, Secretary of State Rubio, the rest of President Trump's leadership team in this operation to talk about why it's so important that we stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. That's been the objective from day one. They talked about some of the threats. Obviously, I can't go into the things that were discussed in a classified setting, but they've been very clear what the mission is. And of course, we know they complied with the War Powers Act, which some previous administrations didn't even do, but President Trump has done that, and he's operating under his legal authority to keep America safe from the threat of a nuclear Iran. And let's not forget that this is a regime that has killed hundreds of Americans over years, over decades. This has been going on for a long time. Iran's declared war against us decades ago. Whether or not we were going to deal with this threat, something a lot of American presidents talked about. President Trump actually took decisive action to keep America safe from a very tyrannical regime that not only killed their own people, but has killed Americans over decades and would continue to do so. And it made it clear their intent was to get a nuclear weapon, and they chant death to America. And this president recognized that threat and did something about it. And we appreciate that he's done that as we pray for our troops who are carrying out this important mission. Take a couple of questions.
Your Democratic counterparts have said that they did not hear enough of a plan, that there's not necessarily a plan for the day after, that there's not a deep plan for protecting Americans that need to get out. What do you say to that in response?
Well, maybe they don't want to hear what the plan is because they just don't like this president. They seem to root against anything he does. But everybody's acknowledged the threat that Iran has posed to the world and specifically to the United States for decades. People in both parties have done that for a long, long time. Some people have ignored the threat, but the threat was getting worse. Their ability to enrich uranium, to develop a nuclear weapon, had been growing. And everybody knows that. And this president finally did something about it.
Over the summer, the White House said that they had obliterated Iran's nuclear program. Was that bad intelligence? Were they misinformed?
We know Iran not only had multiple facilities where they were developing nuclear weapons, but as soon as that operation was over, it was called Operation Midnight Hammer, I believe, Iran went right back to work trying to develop a nuclear weapon. And, by the way, not only drones, but ballistic missiles to carry out nuclear weapons. And if you look at some of the negotiations that were going on prior to this operation being carried out, the president and his diplomatic team, led by Secretary of State Rubio, had been trying to reach a diplomatic solution for months. And Iran had taken every ability to negotiate, for example, enriching uranium off the table, the delivering of ballistic missiles off the table. They made it very clear they had absolutely no intention of stopping the push, the mad rush to get a nuclear weapon. So even though that operation was successful, they went right back to work trying to develop a nuclear weapon and enriching uranium, and they had multiple locations where they were doing that.
Was there a request for a supplemental, and could the House pass one?
There was early talk of a supplemental, but we're not at a stage where any of those numbers could be discussed. Look, you're going to see a robust debate about this over the next weeks and months, but the American people are looking at this too, and they're wondering, is the world and America specifically safer with this Iranian regime gone? And when you look at their abilities that they were moving and advancing on to get a nuclear weapon, what would they have done with that when they are chanting death to America? Take them at their word, because they have killed hundreds of American troops over the last few decades, and they were continuing to do that. This isn't some new threat. It's been an ongoing threat, but the threat was getting more imminent.
On the nuclear weapon, Netanyahu, for over 30 years now, has been saying they are imminently going to get a nuclear weapon. A decade ago, he was saying they're weeks or months away. Anthony Blinken, Biden's Secretary of State, said they are weeks away. So for decades, they've been apparently weeks away. So how do you expect Americans to believe now that this was actually the time when they were about to get it and we struck at the perfect moment?
I don't speak for other countries, but if you listen to what President Trump has talked about, our intelligence has shown that Iran had become very close to being able to deliver nuclear capabilities. And after Midnight Hammer, they still were pursuing nuclear ambitions to go and kill them and do harm to Americans. And they were making it clear. Just listen to what Iran was saying. They were telling you what they wanted to do. And again, these are the same people that were chanting death to America because that is what they wanted to do with nuclear weapons. And that's why President Trump has made it clear you cannot have a world where Iran has a nuclear weapon because, yes, they're a threat to a lot of countries, especially in the Middle East region, but they're a direct threat to America, and they've killed Americans for decades, and they had no intention to stop. Even with diplomatic means, they had no intention of rolling back those plans. So President Trump is carrying out a very important mission that's making America safer, and we're praying for the safety and true effectiveness of this mission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leader.
I just wanted to say briefly that we had a full house tonight. I believe this is the, I think the third or fourth briefing that I've been to. It was Gang of 8, then we did Gang of 20, and now the full house was there. Many people attended. There were good questions. There was good exchange of information, and I was grateful for the briefers of giving yet another valuable amount of time to come and talk with the House. They made clear, and they've been very consistent from the beginning, that the objective, the mission here, the rationale for it is very clear and very simple. You've heard it articulated over and over and over from the President of the United States, from the Secretary of State, from the Secretary of War, myself, and many others who have said this over and over. I'm not sure why there are lingering questions about this. This is really a very simple matter. It's about the building of ballistic missiles. That's what Iran was engaged in. And they were doing it at a speed and at a scale that was exceeding the ability of our regional allies to respond appropriately. This created an imminent and serious threat. It also gave them cover to continue with their nuclear ambitions. As you know, we tried very hard to negotiate with them about that nuclear enrichment of uranium. We tried to talk with them about their continuing to fund their proxies, all the terrorist organizations that have wreaked havoc and killed Americans and American citizens. And the buildup of their missiles was so important and so serious that the President of the United States, this President, thought that it was a great enough threat that we needed to act. We had a narrow and unique opportunity, a window of opportunity to act, and if that window had passed, it would have been much more difficult for us to achieve the mission. The mission is very simple. It's twofold. We take out their ability to launch ballistic missiles and to produce ballistic missiles, and we downgrade their Navy. That's it. That's what we're doing. It's short in scope. It does not violate the law in any way. It was explained here very well. I'm a constitutional law attorney, used to litigate these questions. We had counsel from the DOJ here tonight who said very well, very clearly, fell just short of citing the specific case law, but explained that this has been the tradition for decades. The President is well within his constitutional authority to do what he has done, and it is entirely consistent with a history of former presidents for at least 4 decades. There's no question about this. The Democrats never had any question about it when Democrat presidents were using this authority. When you look at the analysis of the War Powers Act and the law that applies and the powers that are given to the Commander-in-Chief under Article 2 of the Constitution, President Trump has done exactly what he should do. He is squarely within the law. He used his discretion and his authority and the intelligence that he had, exquisite as it was, as is demonstrated by its effectiveness, and he did what he should have done as a Commander-in-Chief. The idea that a few colleagues here would try to move a War Powers motion and resolution to the floor right now is dangerous. Imagine a scenario where Congress would vote to tell the Commander-in-Chief that he was no longer allowed to complete this mission. That would be a very dangerous thing. You see that Iran is firing almost seemingly indiscriminately at targets. They're trying to intimidate America. They're trying to test our resolve. And the idea that there's some members of this legislative body that would play along with that plays right into the hands of the enemy. And I think it's shameful. I do believe we have the votes to defeat it. I certainly hope we do, because we have lots of troops, service members, in harm's way right now, and the balance of this thing is hanging there. It's been very effective thus far. It needs to be completed. We don't need Congress getting in the way of that. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Is there any indication of plans? Representative Scalise said he heard one. Democrats say they're not hearing one. What happens when the war ends? What does that look like, and then what does the day after look like?
Look, no one can yet determine with any degree of certainty how this will turn out. We have taken out what appears to be top few layers of leaders and potential leaders who would take over there. It is time for the people of Iran to step up and seize this moment of opportunity for them, the one that they have long awaited, to have freedom there. We're encouraging that. We're hopeful for that. I think our NATO allies and our other allies around the world are watching with great anticipation and hope. I suspect that the entire world will reach out a hand of encouragement and assistance as is needed to help them. We have no ability to get into the nation-building business. We don't do that. We're not the world's policemen. America has enough trouble of our own. But I think this is a great development for the people there to be able to stand on their own 2 feet and seize this moment of opportunity. We're certainly hopeful and prayerful that they will, and that no other innocent people are killed. Iran, by some estimates, murdered tens of thousands of their own citizens just within the last several weeks. Those people are now deceased. They do not have the ability to do that. There's still dangerous folks there, but there's more good people. There's more people who desire to have freedom and liberty, and there are terrorists and tyrants in the world. I'm grateful for that. This is their moment to step up, and I hope they will. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Mr. Speaker, based on what you heard,
Nonetheless, this is on.
Anyone interested in hearing from the PhD physicist here?
Why not?
Okay.
What are you most
I'm Congressman Bill Foster. I'm the PhD physicist in Congress.
As the PhD physicist, what are you most concerned
Well,
about?
the same thing I was concerned about after the strikes of last summer. That the only question here, if you're worried about Iranians' ability to put together a nuclear weapon on a short time scale, is where is their stockpile of 60% enriched uranium. We have heard that they never had a plan, not last summer and not now, to destroy that, to seize it, or to put it under international inspection. And until that happens, Iran will be very, very close to making, as many, in a non-classified situation, many observers have pointed out, Iran can use that material to make a handful of Hiroshima-style nuclear devices. Not the sort you can put on a missile, but the sort you can deliver by a number of other ways and are very hard to stop. So I was very disappointed that we did not see a plan to put that material under control or destroy it.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'll start off by just saying this. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. There's no plans. What happens afterwards? There's no plans. What was planned to get Americans out of the way that are still stuck there? There's no plan. We have not learned the lessons of the past. What we see continuing here is, number one, we had 1 hour for members of Congress to ask questions, when all they have ever had was 2 meetings with the Gang of 8 and 1 meeting with the Gang of 12 or 18 or whatever it was. That's it. 1 hour that they wanted to cut short and tell members to ask a question in 1 minute. No hearings. In the Foreign Affairs Committee, I've asked the chairman of the committee over and over again, can you bring administration officials in? None. No citing, and no one allowed to talk to Stephen Witkoff or Jared Kushner to ask them about the negotiations that were supposed to be taking place. In fact, it seems as though this was pre-planned all along, because when you hear Prime Minister Netanyahu says this has been planned months ago. And then when you hear time after time, meeting after meeting, it switches on why the war started when it started. Because there was clearly no imminent threat to the United States of America. So here we are again, without answers. Here we are again, without complete transparency. Here we are again, trying to go around Congress, which is why tomorrow's vote on war powers resolution is tremendously important, because we don't have a king, and we're not a parliament. We're the Congress that stated that only the Congress can declare war. And everyone in the room and other places says this is a war. You know, initially, one point they were saying this was not a war, so you can get around the war powers. Well, the president says it's a war. The secretaries are saying it's a war. Everyone is saying it is a war. They called what took place on the 12-day war. Come to Congress, answer our questions, and put the case to the American people. Convince and let the American people know what took place and why. I've been here a long time. I was here in 2003. At least George W. Bush. Colin Powell went before the committee. He went before the UN. George Bush went before all of the people of the United States over and over and over again, trying to convince them that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. At that time, I looked, because I had access. Truth of the matter is, there was times I could just call somebody in the administration. They didn't call me down to the White House. They came to my office to try to convince me on what it was. I did not see a nexus. They did the same thing with Afghanistan. And this time they convinced me that there was a connection to 9/11. This administration, the Trump administration, is doing everything that they can not to tell the American people the real reason why it was absolutely necessary to go to war when they went to war.
What do you think the real reason is, Congressman? What do you think the real reason is? Why now?
Well, my thing is, as far as diplomacy is concerned, it never was really on the table. I think that what Prime Minister Netanyahu has said, this was planned months ago. That's what he said. So I think that President Trump, Prime Minister Netanyahu, decided a month ago or more that this is what they were going to do. Now, without telling anyone or having the reasons to be able to explain, but I think that, I know on President Trump's side, he thinks that he can do whatever he wants to do and take us into war after war. I mean, I think there's 6 or 7 times already where he's utilized the military. He acts like it's his toy, and then he talks about it. You know, he's at a ceremony honoring people, and he starts talking about curtains and him doing the, fixing the, I think it's gaudy what he's doing, the White House. Our young men and women, lives are on the line. The hardest vote for me since I've been in Washington, D.C., is to vote to decide whether or not our men and women should go into battle, not joke about it and talk about curtains. It's serious, but do you see how he plays with it and seemingly don't take it serious about the seriousness and the lives of the men and women in our military who, I might add, they're great. They do their job. They're focused on this country, and they will do whatever the commander-in-chief tells them to do. So I admire them. They deserve to know why we're in this war at this time. They deserve to know.
Did you hear any indication in the briefing from the secretaries whether they're willing or ready to put boots on the ground in Iran?
I'm not going to talk about anything specifically in that regards. Since we were in the class, I'm giving you what my, not what was said in there, but I'm telling you what I got out of it. And what I feel as a result of not only what took place in there today, but what has taken place from the time that we've been in this war. Because I hear different rationales. It's regime change one day. It's because Israel was going to strike and then they were going to retaliate against us another day. It's because the president decided it just was time to go another day. It's because there was an imminent threat another day. Each day, sometimes twice a day, the rationale for doing this changes. That tells me it is not serious, and they're not talking straight to the American people on something that is life and death. And what the results are going to be. We had this battle, my Republican colleagues, all for the previous last 2 years on Afghanistan. We've been there for 20 years, and they talked about the death of individuals, of our soldiers, et cetera, and wanted to make sure that we went in depth and tried to blame everything on President Biden at the time. In fact, that's all he does now, is say Biden, Biden, Biden. This is his presidency. This is his war that he's created. And he's got to stand up, and he's going to be held accountable for it.
I'm going to add just a few comments. I'm Congresswoman Melanie Stansbury of the Oversight Committee, and I just want to directly respond to what the Speaker just said to the press, which is that Congress should stay out of it. My response is, Mr. Speaker, have you read the United States Constitution? Because the U.S. Constitution is clear that the power to declare war squarely sits with Congress. And it is very clear that this administration has not put forward a viable argument for why the U.S. should be declaring war on Iran and why it has deployed military resources without congressional authorization. So let me amplify a few things that Ranking Member Meeks has put forward. First of all, has this administration provided a viable legal theory of why we should be going to war with Iran? No. Has this administration put forward a credible piece of evidence as to why there was an imminent threat that meets a legal threshold for attacking Iran? No. Can they explain what their post-conflict plan is for rebuilding and stabilizing the region? No. Can they explain whether and how the breakdown in diplomatic efforts occurred? No. Can they explain why they hit a school full of school children and murdered over 100 school children? No. And can they explain how they plan to stop the loss of U.S. service members? No. In fact, as has already been stated publicly, they expect more deaths of American service members. So the American people need to be demanding that Congress pass this war powers resolution. This is Congress's square responsibility, and we are not going to allow this administration to continue to act illegally, unconstitutionally, and without the designated authority to do what it is doing. So thank you very much.